This creates a simple but important trade-off. A predator may be capable of winning a fight, while still having very good reasons not to risk one. And once you see the problem this way, another hidden cost becomes easier to notice. The animal is not only risking injury, it is also risking everything else it could have been doing instead. There is another problem with fighting, and it is easier to miss. A predator does not live in a world where time stands still. While two animals are fighting, they are not hunting, they are not resting, they are not watching for danger, and they are not using that time for anything else that could help them survive. That matters because wild animals do not get unlimited chances. A predator may spend hours searching for food. If a confrontation suddenly takes over that time, the opportunity can disappear. The prey may move away, another predator may arrive, or the animal may simply lose the energy it needed for the hunt. So even when nobody gets seriously injured, the fight can still have a cost. Think of it like this. You could win the argument, but still lose the entire afternoon. For a wild predator, the stakes are much higher. Energy has to be spent carefully. Hunting takes energy, defending a territory takes energy, and raising young takes energy too. Every unnecessary physical confrontation adds another demand to that limited budget. This is why survival is not simply about being stronger. It is also about knowing when strength should actually be used. And nature has another way of solving this problem. Predators do not always need to fight to find out who should back away. So if fighting is expensive, how does one predator find out whether another predator is worth challenging? The answer is that nature has another option. Animals can communicate information without immediately making physical contact. A predator may change its posture, make a warning sound, display its size, or leave a scent that tells another animal it is already there. None of this guarantees that a fight will never happen, but it can change what happens next. Imagine two predators noticing each other from a distance. Neither one needs to rush forward and start biting. They can watch first. One may appear larger. The other may respond with a display or a vocal warning. The animals are gathering information before taking a much bigger risk. That makes these signals surprisingly important. A physical fight gives you information, but the price can be extremely high. A display can sometimes provide useful information without requiring the same physical risk. And that changes the way you should think about animal conflict. It is not always a simple contest of strength. Sometimes, the most important part of the encounter happens before either animal touches the other. But there is still a bigger question. What are these predators actually trying to protect when they decide whether to stay or leave? To understand that, you have to look at the space around them. Now look at what is around the predator. For many animals, the space they live in is not just empty land. It can contain food, shelter, mates, and places where young animals are raised. That makes certain areas worth defending. But defending a territory does not always mean fighting over every meter of it. Animals can leave signs that tell others they are already there. Scent marks, vocalizations, and repeated movement through an area can all provide information about who is using that space. So another predator may discover something before the two animals ever stand face to face. Someone is already here. That sounds simple, but it changes the entire encounter. If a rival recognizes that another predator is using an area, approaching it may carry a different cost than simply moving somewhere else. There may be no reason to test the situation physically. This is one reason a landscape can contain far more information than you can see. To you, a forest may look quiet. To a predator, it can contain signals left by other animals, showing where they have been and what spaces they are using. And now, the question becomes even more interesting. If a predator can gather all this information without fighting, how does it judge whether the animal on the other side is actually dangerous? A predator does not need to test every rival with a physical fight. Before that happens, there may already be useful clues. Size is one of them. A larger animal can present a different level of risk than a smaller one. Age and physical condition can matter too. So can the situation itself? Is the animal alone? Is it protecting young? Is it defending a valuable area? Those details can change what happens next. This is important because the strongest animal is not automatically the one with the strongest position in every encounter. A predator that is larger but injured may be in a different situation from a healthy rival. An animal defending its young may also behave differently from one simply passing through. So, the encounter is not just about strength. It is about context. The animals are not sitting there doing calculations like humans. Natural selection has shaped behaviors that help them respond to useful signals and changing situations. And that creates an interesting shortcut. A physical fight could reveal who is stronger, but getting that information can be extremely expensive. If an animal can avoid paying that price, there is a clear advantage to doing so. But sometimes signals are not enough. Sometimes neither animal wants to leave. And that is when the quiet encounter can finally become something much more dangerous. Sometimes neither predator backs away. Maybe both are competing for the same territory. Maybe food is involved. Maybe one animal is protecting its young. Whatever the reason, the situation can become difficult to avoid. This is where the encounter can escalate. It may begin with distance, then comes watching, followed by displays or warnings. If neither animal gives way, the distance can shrink. Eventually, physical contact may happen. And this tells us something important. The fight is not necessarily the first form of communication between the animals. It can be the final stage of an encounter that has already contained several signals. That changes how you should understand predator fights. When you see two powerful animals suddenly attacking each other, it may look like pure aggression. But the visible fight can be only the last part of a much longer process. There is another reason these encounters can become serious. Sometimes the thing being defended is valuable enough that leaving has its own cost. A predator cannot simply walk away from every challenge forever. If abandoning a territory means losing access to food or exposing young to danger, the calculation changes. So, yes, apex predators can fight. They are not peaceful animals. They are simply animals operating under a different rule. A fight has to be worth its cost. And that brings us to another question. If fighting is so dramatic, why do humans often mistake it for the normal behavior of predators? There is one more reason this behavior can seem strange to us. Humans naturally notice dramatic events. Two predators fighting is easy to remember. It is loud, violent, and obvious. A video of that encounter can make it look like powerful animals are constantly looking for reasons to attack each other. But think about the encounters nobody records. One predator notices another from a distance. They watch each other for a moment. One changes direction, and the other continues on its way. There is no dramatic ending, so there is usually no story for us to watch. This creates a simple problem with the way we see wildlife. The most exciting encounters are not necessarily the most typical ones. A fight is highly visible. Avoidance is quiet. And because quiet behavior rarely gets our attention, we can easily build the wrong picture of what predators normally do. This also explains why the word apex can be misleading. When people hear apex predator, they often imagine the strongest animal in the area. The animal that wins every confrontation. The animal that never backs down. But nature does not actually work like a tournament. Being near the top of a food web does not mean an animal has to prove its strength every time another predator appears. And once you understand that, the entire question starts to look different. So what does apex predator really mean? It does not simply mean the strongest animal in the area. It means an animal that sits near the top of its food web, with few or no natural predators regularly hunting it. That is very different from being unbeatable. An apex predator still has to find food, avoid unnecessary injuries, defend important resources, and survive long enough to reproduce. Suddenly, the original question looks different. You started by asking why powerful predators do not simply fight whenever they meet. But the deeper answer is that survival is not a tournament. There is no prize for winning the most fights. A predator that constantly turns every encounter into a battle could create problems that have nothing to do with the rival standing in front of it. Sometimes, strength helps you win. Sometimes knowing when not to use it helps you survive. And that is why the quiet moments between predators can be more revealing than the dramatic fights we usually notice. Because the real skill is not always winning the confrontation. Sometimes, it is making sure the confrontation never becomes necessary. So maybe apex predators do not survive because they are always ready to fight. They survive because they do not need to. Sometimes, walking away is not weakness. It is simply the better choice. And once you start looking at nature this way, many ordinary animal behaviors become a lot more interesting. There are still plenty of hidden rules like this waiting to be uncovered.